Okay, what is going on, people? Welcome to the very first episode of Retang Does Sports. My name is Retang Litswalo, and I am your host. And this right here is my voice meeting the games that I absolutely love. Now, before we get into the recaps and the previews and the analysis, I want to share my reason briefly on why I decided to take this passion project up. Well, for those who know me, it's not a secret that I absolutely love sports. I mean, I've played them my whole life, I've watched them, I've argued about them, I've played them at a really high level, and I just love sports in general. I watch rugby, football, American football, cricket, tennis, golf. I mean, it's like a daily diet for me, sports, and something that I've been able to enjoy in my life. But here's the thing, right? Not everyone shares the same passion as I do. I've got friends and family and acquaintances who don't follow sports nearly as closely as I do. I mean, when watching a tense game, with someone asking what a try is, or what offsides is, or what a ruck is, it can be very humbling, and sometimes distracting. But this actually opened my eyes, Instead of complaining about this, I've decided to do something about it. And this podcast is my answer to all of those questions. Now, Retang Does Sports is going to be a space where everyone who wants to dive deeper, whether you're a lifelong fan or you're trying to understand why rugby fans scream at breakdowns and rucks, I've got you covered. We'll talk about strategy, we'll preview matchups, we'll break down finals and games in general, we'll drop some hot takes, we'll debate dream draft teams, and we'll welcome along guests along the way. Now, at the core of all of this is going to be education, insight, and a love for the game. This is a passion project of mine, one that I've dreamed about doing for a long time. So please, if you're with me, please like, comment, subscribe, and share this to people that you know. Let's build a community around the stories, the drama, and the depth that makes sports so magical. With that being said, let us get into the action. This week, I'll be covering rugby as well as I'll be covering tennis. So with rugby, I will start off with the post-match analysis of the Springboks versus Italy test match that happened last week at Loftus Versfeld. After a 42-24 win for the Springboks last week at Loftus Versfeld, the general vibe around the team is, complicated, I would say. On paper, it looks like a comfortable result, but if we really dig deeper into the media, the statistics, and the Springbok camp in general, the general feeling has been frustration. It was one of those classic games of two halves, if you want to call it that. The first half by the Springboks was very controlled, clinical, and dominant, while the second half was very sloppy, passive, and disjointed. But look, I'm not going to spend too long on that game. The real focus of today is the encounter tomorrow in Nelson Mandela Bay. So there's more at stake in that game. There's more to prove. There's some big decisions on the table. Now let's get into it. Last weekend marked the first official test for the Boks, and to be honest, we looked rusty. The final score of 42-24 might suggest a level of control, but the performance told a completely different story. For large parts of the match, it felt like the engine was stuttering. There were only a handful of standout performers, and at this point in time, I want to give them their dues and props. Firstly, Morne van der Berg scored an absolutely beautiful brace, scoring 2 tries, and his kicking game was absolutely pinpoint. Grappies is going to be a fine number 9 for us in the future, going into the Rugby Championship and looking ahead at the next World Cup. Now, Vincent Chituka has had an absolutely fantastic start to his Springbok career. He played incredibly well against the Barbarians, and as well in the game against Italy last week. I mean, he played with absolute heart. He was physical in contact. He had a few key moments, turnovers, and you could see just hunger and just the sheer indefatigability that he possessed to really bring the physicality to the Italian squad. For me, in my opinion, he was the man of the match last week. Oxenche, Vilko Low, I mean, these two props are props that are going to take us far into the Rugby Championship and going into the autumn series later. I mean, Ox and Vilko as a scrum prop pairing were absolutely dominant from the front foot, controlling the scrum, not giving Italy, who have a very good forward pack, any kind of foothold in the scrummaging battle. They were absolutely phenomenal. Now, Kurtley Arnser, another player who had a great game last week, was absolutely electric. I mean, every time he touched the ball, you were almost holding your breath, waiting for him to either break the line or to sidestep someone. It's a pity that the grass had so much dew on it, where you could see he'd step another player, and just as he is about to make forward progress, we see that he slips on the grass. It was frustrating, but to watch. But I mean, he is an absolutely amazing player. I'd also like to highlight Damien Willems as well. First game back for the green and gold after some months in recovery from injury. He had a great game. Willems for me is a very good 15, and he just controlled the game and the pace when we needed him to, and having an amazing line break, stepping 4 or 5 players to eventually set up, which was a disallowed try, but set up a try for Vincent Chituka on the left-hand side of the field. Now, saying that, not everyone had a great game last week. Notably, Malcolm Marx, who is Mr. Consistent, wasn't at his usual dominant level, and as well as Bongi Mbonambi. Well, I'll say that everyone could see, if you watched the game, the line out was not where it needed to be. We conceded a 22-meter try from a line out, which is wild, absolutely wild, considering that traditionally that is an area of dominance for us. We were completely average at the line out, and I can bet you certain this week a lot of time was spent analyzing and looking at the line out. I know that Malcolm Marx and Eben and now coach Dwayne Vermeulen, they would have been spent a lot of time with the jumpers as well as the hookers this week, looking at the breakdown. So I anticipate seeing us going for the line a lot more and looking to rectify the mistakes that we made last week in this coming test tomorrow. Now, if we're being honest, that was a very bang average performance by the Springboks. Absolutely nothing special. But there's 2 things that I want to caveat. Firstly, let's acknowledge that we're in a very privileged position as Springbok supporters that we can call a 6-try performance very average. That is a good problem to have, but it speaks to the standards that this team has set for us. Secondly, I want to give full credit to Italy. They struggled early on to find the rhythm, but once they did, they played incredibly smart rugby, disruptive rugby. In fact, their rush defense gave us huge problems, and the way they were able to control the breakdown really set them up for success going into the rest of the game. or the second half, should I say, rather. And if you're unfamiliar with what a rush defense is, here's a quick breakdown. A rush defense basically is a system where defenders will shoot up aggressively off of the line, aiming to cut down the time and space for the attacking team. It forces errors, it flattens the attacking team's lines, and especially punishes teams that take way too long at the ruck. Italy combined that with their deliberate breakdown slowing tactics, the classic dark arts, if you want to call it that. All legal, but it was the dark arts, the hands in the rucks and waiting for the ref to call them on it, players not rolling away or players lying on the wrong side at the rucks, all the tips and tricks that you do to try and slow down the ruck of your opponents. It frustrated the flow and made it nearly impossible for Faf and Grappies to get clean ball from the rucks. And it worked. Our attack looked very disjointed, hesitant, and panicked at times, and just didn't look like we had much variety. Also, saying this after us scoring 6 points, but 6 tries, but nonetheless, we looked hesitant with ball in hand. Now, how do you beat this? Well, going into next week's test, we'll need to get quick ball out of the ruck. We'll need to recycle faster, and we need to be attacking the edges of the rucks before the defense can reload. But we'll get into the Boks pre-game match in a second. Now, finally, looking at last week's game, the post-match interviews did not need subtitles to feel the frustration. You could see it plain as day on the faces of Rassie and Jesse Creel. The answers to the reporters were very short. They were clipped and honestly borderline irritated. This wasn't a performance that they wanted or expected, to be honest. Rassie even saying that certain egos in the squad were bruised on that day. But maybe, just maybe, that this is the wake-up call that some of the players needed, or the squad in general needed. This sets up for a tantalizing encounter next week in Gqeberha at the Nelson Mandela Stadium. A ground that holds emotional weight for many of the South African rugby players. And, now I am excited to see that there is going to be a fresh look in the Springbok squad in this week's test match. Now, in the post-match interview last week, Rassie said that we would see a huge rotation in the squad. He had promised certain players would start this game and that certain players would be on the bench, obviously. The Springboks coaching staff, I think, are clearly trying to be intentional about managing the workload of the players. This isn't just a tactical switch. I believe that this is a long-term planning, as we still have the Rugby Championship and the Autumn Tour, which will need to play France and Ireland in that series. Two top tier 1 sides. And I think this is the coaching staff really looking at managing the players and trying to be risk averse in a way, but also just managing the level of injuries in the squad. So if you're wondering why some of your favorite names aren't starting or even in the match day 23, this is likely the reason. It's not because they're bad performance or they're dropping players. It's about preserving them for the bigger picture. Now, let's get into this week's squad selection and what this might actually tactically mean. As you can see on your screen, we see Thomas du Toit coming into the squad after not actually playing in the squad for a while, is taking over the number 1 jersey, which has been worn by Ox over the last 2 weeks. Again, just managing minutes for some of our more experienced and quote-unquote first-team players. Second, we have Malcolm Marx, which for me, this is a bit of a surprise. I thought maybe we might see Bongi start this game, as Bongi hasn't really started many games. Well, he hasn't started any games really. I thought we might see Bongi in this game start, but I think it's very clear that Rassie backs Malcolm Marx and wants him to go and rectify his errors from Saturday's game. So I think we should be expecting to see a very good clinical Malcolm Marx. Now moving on to Volkolo, he retains the number 3 jersey. He had a great game last week, and I'm really excited to see what him and Thomas du Toit can both do. Both of them scrumming extremely well for club level. So it'll be really good to see what those two props can do for us in the scrum. Now moving on to our locks. Salman Murat, our captain on the day, as well as Ruan Norkia. Salman Murat for me is a controversial and very interesting player. He plays great rugby for the Stormers, but do I think that warrants him at this point in time to be playing for the Springboks? I don't quite believe so. I think he needs to raise his level a bit more in order for him to be warranted a position. But hey, then again, who am I, right? I'm just a guy who speaks about sports on the internet. But Rassie Erasmus clearly backs him to some degree, backs him even to the point of captaining him. And it's not the first time we've seen him play, if I'm not mistaken, and he captained actually in the game against Portugal last year, which we won by a 60-point margin. So Rassie obviously backs him to some degree, hence he is the captain. So then moving on to our flanks, our 6 and our 7. Marco van Staden still holding the number 6 jersey. I think, again, looking at managing minutes, I think Rassie would have seen that though Sia Kolisi is available for this game, I think looking ahead at the test we still have, it'd be good to give him just another week of recovery. It's never bad to have another week of recovery. So this sets up well for Marco to still maintain the 6 jersey, which he hasn't done a bad job in. I think he's really done a good job in the 6. But I will say we are missing the physicality that Sia brings, as well as his commanding nature at the breakdown. But we'll be able to see Sia thrive more in the bigger games, i.e. Australia, New Zealand, and Argentina in the Rugby Championship. Now, our number 7, we have the best rugby player on the planet coming back into the squad, Pieter-Steph du Toit. It is very exciting for me, and I think most Springboks fans, to see Pieter-Steph coming back into the squad. We've really missed that domineering energy that he brings, and someone who's really good at the breakdown, which is where we've been struggling. So I'm really happy to see him back into the squad, and really excited to see how he's going to adapt after injury, being back into the Springbok squad. I hope he's able to start off quickly, and that it doesn't take him too long to kind of get his feet orientated and get back to test match pace. But he's the best player in world rugby, so it shouldn't take him too long. Now, going on to our number 8, Jasper Wiese. Jasper Wiese has firmly established himself as one of the best 8s in world rugby, and our starting 8. So, no, not much really to chat about there. Now, moving on to our backline. This is where things really spice up. Grant Williams and Manie Libbok in the 9 and the 10 position. Grant Williams, I'm so happy to see back into the squad. Just this halfback pairing here, this 9 and 10 pairing here, tells me everything I need to know about our intention on Saturday. Just from this, I'm seeing we are going to be playing expansive, fast fast-paced rugby, and I am so excited to see this. I think that these two are going to be kind of a spark plug that we've been needing in our backline, and I'm glad to see Mani Lebok in the 10. For me, I see this position is going to get slowly taken away out of the hands of Andre Pollard. I think as a squad, we are moving away from Andre. Andre is a phenomenal 10, but looking at the future in the next couple of years before the World Cup, I think it's important to recognize that we need to move past Pollard. He can kind of function in almost like a France Stain kind of a role, where France was in and amongst the squad, but he never really had many minutes. He would really only come on in tight games where we need to see something out. But then again, I don't know what the coaching staff is thinking. But that 9 and 10 pairing really excite me going into the test match on Saturday. Now, looking at the wings, Makazole Mapimpi at 11 and Edwill van der Merwe. Makazole Mapimpi, I don't think I've seen him play a bad game in the green and gold jersey. And number 14, Edwill van der Merwe. Edwill van der Merwe. I'm really happy to see him back into the squad. He bursted onto the scene last year in the test against Wales at Twickenham in England. So it is going to be incredibly exciting to see him back on the field. Now moving on to our center pairing, our 12 and 13, Andre Esterhuizen and Keenan Moody. This is going to be a very exciting partnership. Keenan Moody, playing for the Bulls. Jake White has played him out wide on the wing. But in my opinion, seeing the success that Keenan has had with the Springboks, if you remember back to the game before the World Cup against New Zealand at Twickenham, he played phenomenal in that 13 jersey with Esterhuizen, I might add. So it's going to be a phenomenal sight on Saturday, being able to see those two moving the ball between them in the midfield. It's going to be a great midfield battle. Now, our 15, Mr. Willie Leroux, who is getting his 100th test cap. I mean, this is phenomenal. I remember being a lighty and seeing Willie Leroux starting his career back in what was it, 2013. It's an incredible milestone. It's not a milestone that many players get to. So for him to get to this point, I mean, hats off. But I think this is a tactical decision more than an emotional decision from Rassie and the coaching staff. I see this as Willie, Sienki, here is your 100th test. Thank you for being a faithful servant of the Springboks. But now I think we are moving to a stage where we are going to see less of Willie and more of players like Damian Willemse and Apelele Fassi playing that 15 role. I don't see Willie seeing many test starts in this rugby season. Now, that helps move now to the bench, where we have a very controversial bench, if I might say so myself. We have a controversial 5-3 split here. Not something we do too often. We love a 6-2 as a Springbok squad. We love a 6-2. It's been a while since we've done a 5-3. But let's look at it. At number 16, we have Jan Hendrik Wessels, who's been playing really, really well. He's been scrumming really well, When he came on the field last week, he scrummed really well. And in the game against the Barbarians, he scrummed really well. And it's interesting to see him taking the 16 jersey. So is Jan-Hendrik Wessels going to come on for Malcolm Marx in the second half? This is going to be very interesting because if you watch rugby, you'll know that Jan-Hendrik Wessels can play prop as well as hooker. So this is going to be very interesting to see how he plays in hooker. I'm actually very excited because then this just adds more depth to our hooker position. Now, going into our number 17, Ox, I mean, he's just absolutely phenomenal. And then going into our number 18, Asanati Intlabakanye, getting his official test debut today. He played in the Barbarians game, but that was an exhibition game, so this gives him his full test debut. And then Kobus Wiese, the brother of Jasper Wiese, it'll be interesting to see if the Wiese brothers will be able to share the field. I doubt it, because seeing that Evan Ruiz is on the bench as well at number 20, who will most likely come onto the field and replace Jasper Wiese, as I don't see Wiese playing 80 minutes like he did in the previous week. Now, moving on to our backline players, Kobus Reinach and Sasha Feinberg and Gomezulu as our 9 and 10, supposedly 9 and 10 replacements. And then we have Ethan Hooker, who's getting a debut as well today. Ethan Hooker plays in the midfield at outside center, so I'm sure that he will come off of the bench for Kanan Moody, if I'm not mistaken. But now looking at this, I don't see Willie Leroux playing a full 80 minutes. So are we going to see Sasha Feinberg and Gomezulu playing in the 15? That's gonna be very interesting. It's gonna make us a lot more expansive and explosive, having Mani and Sasha on the field at the same time. I don't think we've actually seen this combination between the two backline players. It's gonna be very interesting to see how they share the territorial kicking duties, as well as how they are able to interplay with one another. I can just imagine it's going to be an incredibly expansive game of rugby, which makes me extremely excited for this game tomorrow. Now, looking ahead at this match, I think that there's 3 key areas where the Springbok need to lock in if we are going to dominate. First and foremost is the breakdown and getting quick ball. Last week, we were too slow at the ruck. Italy's rush defense fed us off of that completely. This week, we need to be able to have speed and precision in terms of how we attack. And also, we need to be able to clear out at the breakdown. And if that means, for example, Salman Murat being in the ear of the ref saying, "Ref, he's not rolling, ref on the wrong side," let that be the case, because the more that we're able to draw attention to the fact that there has been that the Italian squad is slowing us down, the more we'll get favor regarding penalties and scrum penalties and such, Secondly, the line out. We lost rhythm and possession completely here last week, and this is where we need to be able to fix up if we plan to lead from the front in terms of domination and physically. Thirdly, the variety of attack. I believe that we were a little bit stagnated last week. We need to be able to vary our attack. It cannot be so predictable. Last week there were very little wraparound, very little switch plays. We need to be able to keep the midfield of the Italians guessing. You could see how in that second half they were able to pick off some of the plays that our backline were doing. Now, that's up to us being predictable, as well as Italy just finding a second gear in that second half. So this leads to a very, very interesting game on Saturday. My score prediction for this game, my score prediction for this game is going to be pretty resounding to the Springboks. I see us winning this game 56-25. I think we'll score more than 6 tries. Looking at our bench as well as our starting backline players, I see us scoring more than 6 tries. So I'm really looking forward to this game on Saturday. What do you guys think? Drop down in the comments what you think. Give me your score predictions. Give me your hot takes about last week's game, and give me your thoughts leading into this game versus Italy in Nelson Mandela Bay in Gqeberha. Alrighty, now briefly moving over to the New Zealand and France game. This was an incredible game last week. New Zealand being stunned by an incredibly inexperienced French team. In their tour to New Zealand, France took 20 out of 40 uncapped players. And so far, the only notable players that have rarely taken the field has been Fiku. Gael Fiku, who's not even in the squad this week, is going to be off the squad this week. But he's been the only one really and truly who has been a notable person within the French first team who's played so far against New Zealand. New Zealand struggled last week. Razor Ball, the coach is his name is Razor. Razor Ball is going to take a lot longer for these All Black players to get used to than what is expected. Now, I am not going to touch too much on this game as I have more sports to cover, but I will be doing a special episode on rugby post-match thoughts, looking at the Argentina versus England game, the New Zealand versus France game, and the South Africa versus Italy game, and potentially having a special guest to join me for that episode. But looking at this New Zealand team, I do just want to mention some notable replacement, as we've seen Scott Barrett, due to injury, is out and being replaced by Patrick Tuapalatu, who, if I can't speak his praises enough, he is an absolute baller. He's physical, he's smart, and his engine is absolutely insane. Now, another injury replacement, Caleb Clark, coming into the 11 jersey for Severis, moving Caleb Clark into 11, and then also Rico Ioane shifts to number 14, which then bumps Severis out of the starting lineup. And now Will Jordan playing 14 last week, we see Will Jordan donning the 15 jersey. But look, I'm not gonna spend too much time talking about this game, but what I do want to say is this: what on earth does Damian McKenzie need to do to get a start in this squad? Now, New Zealand are a phenomenal rugby playing nation, as we know. They are our best rivals, but what does a player of Damian McKenzie's level need to do to get a start in the squad? I mean, last week when he came onto the field, the energy completely flipped. He brought pace, vision, and just unpredictability. I mean, there was a chip and chase which completely opened up the French field, and then his flat balls on the line from his ability to pass so well, and his support running is just so good that for me, I find it very unbelievable that he's still not been able to get a regular start in either the 10 or the 15 jersey. McKenzie's absolute magic. He is a class player. Now, don't get me wrong. Beauden Barrett is a star boy. He is special. But for me, I would love to see a combination between McKenzie at 10 and Beauden Barrett at 15. You can't tell me, if you watch rugby, you cannot tell me that is not a recipe for absolute carnage, where you have Mackenzie, who is expansive, quick, and just so agile, and then you have Beauden Barrett with the vision and the absolute experience, where they're able to dictate a backline and dictate how a pace of a game moves. We've seen it before. We've seen when Mackenzie goes to 10, Beauden at 15, the All Blacks undoubtedly look way better. Now, I caveat this in saying that we have players like Richie Mo'unga who are not in the squad due to New Zealand's, in my opinion, ridiculous rule in terms of not recruiting players who play outside of New Zealand. But anyways, that's a discussion for a different day. But Damien in the 10 and Beauden in the 15 is a recipe for absolute carnage, and a recipe that strikes fear into any other team. But hey, I'm not Razor, I'm not New Zealand, but overall, I think this New Zealand selection is pretty strong, and I see them winning the game again on Saturday morning. The game is at 9 a.m., if I'm not mistaken, 9:05 a.m., which is going to be an early one, if I'm being honest. I can't be asked waking up for that game, but I will be up to watch that game nonetheless, to bring you guys the news from the front. So, now, moving on to tennis. Wow. Tennis is in a phenomenal place. Now, Wimbledon, this is my favorite major of the year. The tradition, the surface, the atmosphere, the respect for the craft of the game, which other tournaments just don't have. You know, this tournament reminds me of the Masters golf tournament where there's just, it is steeped in tradition. It is heralded by the greats. The greats win Wimbledon. The greats win the Masters. Now, I want to cover the women's side of this tournament first before I move on to the gentlemen's side of this tournament. This tournament for the women has been very interesting. Notably, people like Coco Gauff and Jessica Pegula, Coco Gauff being world number 2 and Jessica being world number 3, getting knocked out in the first round, and really only players like Vondrosova and Alina Rybakina being able to get to the mid to late stages of this game. You know, this tournament has been incredibly unpredictable, and if honestly, I think this is what the women's side of the game needed. For me, this sets up to a phenomenal Wimbledon final. And I want to begin speaking about the Wimbledon final with speaking about the semi-final of Aryna Sabalenka and Amanda Anisimova, right? Defending Aryna Sabalenka, the world number 1, in a gripping 3-set semi-final that was more than just a tennis match in terms of what we watched yesterday. It was a story of an absolute comeback, an absolute reinvention of choosing purpose over pressure for Amanda. 2 years ago, if you didn't know the story about Amanda, let me give you a brief summary. 2 years ago, Amanda wasn't on the tour. She wasn't training. She wasn't chasing trophies. She was walking around like a normal 20-something-year-old, feeling burnt out, disillusioned, and, you know, just wanting to live like a normal person again. Now, in 2025, we see Amanda back in tennis and even making it to a Wimbledon final. Not by accident, I might add, not by luck, but by sheer undeniable will and just a sense of indefatigability, the ability not to get tired and not to get tired in the mind. This is her first ever Grand Slam final appearance, and she's got there the long way, I might add. Not through talent alone, but through turmoil and transformation. against Sabalenka, who has been far and wide the most dominant force in women's tennis over the past 18 months. Amanda has never met this kind of player in this late of a tournament before. On paper, the odds lean heavily to Sabalenka. I mean, just the raw power, the depth of form, and the streak of big wins. This was a match set for Sabalenka to win. Sabalenka came off of a two-time defending Australian champion. She's a US Open finalist and regaining world number one with a tour leading win percentage in 2024. Let's be honest, most players who face Sabalenka at this stage of tournaments, they always crumble. The Sabalenka forehand is an absolute cannon, and the serve is an absolute avalanche, and her mental game has evolved to make her an immovable force. But Amanda, in this game, she just did not blink. You know, she didn't just hang in there, but she fought with intelligence, with instinct, with a mixture of subtlety, but also steering the rhythm away from Sabalenka and in her favor. Yes, as we know, Anisimova, her ball striking is what she's known for. That is her signature. It's clean, it's crisp, it's flat through the court. But what elevated this win into something mythical was her movement, her heart, and her tactical flair. She chased down impossible balls. She was hitting running backhands down the line. She spun an angled chip returns, and she floated drop shots that landed like feathers in no man's land. You know, Sabalenka is used to dictating every exchange. You know, suddenly she looked rushed, hesitant, even confused. You know, this was an absolute clinic of mental fortitude from Amanda yesterday. This was a game of wills. And here's a stat actually that shows that this win was not a mere fluke. Anisimova now holds a 5-3 career head-to-head advantage over Sabalenka. She's beaten her on hard, clay, and grass. That is a clean sweep across the tennis universe. This shows that this was not a mere coincidence. This is a problem that Sabalenka has not been able to solve. Anisimova is one of Sabalenka's boogeyman. You could feel the magnitude of Amanda's reaction yesterday after the final point. I mean, there was no fist bump, there was no primal scream. It was just like a slow... It was a slow, heavy exhale. Her body, normally so explosive and expressive, barely moved. She looked stunned, not because she didn't believe it could happen, but because it finally had happened. Disbelief, gratitude, the weight of the journey all landed at once for Amanda yesterday. And then we have Sabalenka. You know, you have to feel for her. She's been far and away the most consistent, dangerous, and complete tennis player on tour. And yet, she lost a tight final to Madison Keys in Australia, then a tight final to Coco at the Roland Garros, and now a tight semi-final to Amanda. That's 3 gut-wrenching Grand Slam exits in matches that could have gone either way. I mean, she's still young, she's still hungry, and she's destined to win way more Grand Slams. But in elite sport, those heartbreaks, they don't just vanish into thin air. They sit in the back of your mind. They echo in the quiet moments of your brain when you're down a set in a round 3 matchup. You know, those things creeping into your mind. They become either something you confront head on or something that you carry. And Sabalenka has made great strides in terms of her mental fortitude, but is this something that she can afford to carry? I don't know. I think this is something that she needs to work on within the next 6 weeks leading up to the US Open. She needs to work on how can she get her mind right to give her the best chance of success at the US Open. One commentator even said this: there's going to be some mental gymnastics in the weeks ahead. And that's true. For all her power, Arena's next evolution will have to come from the spaces between the points, in the way she rebuilds her confidence after close defeats. But I want to circle back to Amanda because this is her moment and I do not want to steal that away from her. And if you've been paying attention, you'll know that this isn't just a fluke of a final run. She made the semis at Roland Garros. She's now on a 29 match win streak after taking the first set. She's on a 29 match winning streak after taking the first set. That is an incredible stat to have, that every time she wins the first set, she is more likely than not to win the match. That is absolutely incredible. And more importantly, she's finally enjoying tennis again. She's playing with fire, but not recklessness, but with love. With love for the fight, not fear of it. 4 years ago, Amanda played just to win. But now she plays because she chooses to play. And that choice, that return to passion, might be the biggest weapon in her arsenal right now. She has walked through burnout, stepped away and found her way back, not just as a competitor, but as someone who has to rewrite their identity on the court. So here she stands in a Wimbledon final. The girl who despaired, returning as a woman with nothing left to prove, but everything left to play for. This leads up to an interesting matchup with Iga Świątek in the Wimbledon ladies final. Now, let's move on to Iga. The calm, icy, precise assassin that she is. Her semi-final match against Belinda Bencic wasn't just a win. It was a quiet dominance. It was a quiet domination. A chess match, if you will, where Iga never let her opponent even touch the board. 6-2, 6-love. Let me repeat that again. 6-2, 6-love. A scoreline that reads like a warm-up game, a qualifying game, a challenger scoreline. That's what that scoreline shows us. Not a Wimbledon semi-final. But that's the terrifying beauty of Iga's tennis right now. She's turning high-stake moments into foregone conclusions. And not by showboating or overpowering, but by removing oxygen from her opponent's lungs, point by point, breath by breath. Let's be very clear. This wasn't supposed to be easy. Bencic is no slouch. She's an Olympic gold medalist, a former top 5 player, someone who's been striking clean and fighting through grueling matches. Just a couple days before, she had gutted out a 3-set battle that showcased her signature balance of aggression and absolute poise. But when she met Iga, none of that mattered. Świątek didn't even allow the match to start on Bencic's terms. From the very first ball, it was Iga's rhythm, Iga's court, Iga's tempo. It was Iga everything. And the numbers, they don't lie. They tell a story of brutal efficiency and exquisite timing from Iga. Iga's first serve consistently clocked around 180 miles per hour, notably quicker than her average serving speed on grass, showing how she's evolving on grass, where she's not normally good on. Grass is her absolutely worst surface, but this shows that she's gaining more confidence. Now, Iga's backhand is drawing comparisons to the fastest, most lethal shot in her game. It's short, it's snappy, and it's devastating. You know, you could almost compare it to, if you know tennis, this might be a bit of a throwback, but James Blake. His forehand in his prime, it was just coil and absolutely fire. It's almost like Iga doesn't take the racket so far back with a full shoulder turn like most tennis pros need to do. It's almost she just drops her hands and then she's able to just snap right through the ball. And she's returning absolutely ridiculously. You know, she is dictating every single point. In essence, she is creating mannequins, freezing her opponents with placement and depth and spin. And one thing that I want to say about Iga is to commend her on her court coverage. It was absolutely out of this world. Świątek's footwork on grass has made a dramatic leap this season. For those who know tennis, thinking back to Pete Sampras in 1993, when grass once hindered him, suddenly he was the king of grass. And Iga is finding her glide as well. Her positioning is absolutely surgical, and her center of gravity is low to the ground. You see, she isn't sprinting to the ball, she's already there, waiting and asking the question, what now? Right? But not just that, she is operating at a level that I haven't seen yet. She's operating at a higher level than what she operated in that 2023 season, where she was winning every single tournament she was entering. But let's zoom out for a second. Let's talk about her mental game, because that's where Iga becomes truly frightening. Folks, she's never lost a Grand Slam final. She is 4 for 4 when the title's on the line. When the pressure is peak, she performs clearer, faster, and with even more composure than anyone on the tour right now. She is 4 for 4. Do you know how hard it is for people to just have a 20% win ratio on in finals, or in Grand Slam finals rather? Iga is 4 for 4. She has 100%, and I think she has only dropped 3 sets. 3 sets in 4 games. 3 sets in 4 games is absolutely insane. So if we're looking at that, most of her matches are actually going in straight sets. Bear that in mind. She's winning 6-4, 6-4, 6-3, 6-3 on a regular basis. That is frightening. We often throw the term and phrases like mentally tough, but this is something else. Iga isn't just handling nerves, she's weaponizing them. You can see it in her serve routines, in the way she holds the middle of the court, and in how she doesn't chase flashy shots. She just plays the right ball at the right time, and even if she misses, she's missing going for it. There is zero indecision in her game right now. Absolutely zero. That's the mark of someone who's completely in flow state. Someone not wondering if they belong, but acting like they are the standard. And in this match, it showed. Benchik, who thrives on rhythm and forward movement, never got out of neutral yesterday. Every point started with promise and ended in resignation. You know, and here, you know, in elite sports, you know, the difference lies fully in mentality. And you could see that Benčić started to lose her head as the points kept taking over onto Iga's side. It was sad to watch, but also incredibly amazing to see how Iga just decimated it, you know. But here's where things get poetic. while Amanda Anisimova is storming back into tennis with a fire, Świątek is the cold wind, invisible, precise, unstoppable. She doesn't break the door down, she turns the handles and walks right through. She's not trying to overpower the moment, she's trying to control it. Remember when we used to say grass wasn't her surface? Yeah, not anymore. Świątek now has beaten 3 top 20 opponents on grass this season, including 2 former Grand Slam finalists. She's winning 84% of points behind her first serve in this tournament, in this Wimbledon's tournament, and she's creating breakpoint chances on over 45% of her return games. That's nearly every other game. Do you know how scary it is to go up against somebody who you have just a 50-50% chance of winning over them? Just above a 50-50% chance. What we're witnessing is a transformation, not just a player adjusting to grass, but a player mastering it. And heading into the final, Świątek knows exactly what she's walking into. It's no secret, Anisimova is dangerous. She hits harder than most players. She's already taken out the world number 1 and the number 1 seed, and she holds a head-to-head advantage over several top-tier players. But Świątek, Iga, isn't intimidated by any means. She doesn't play the opponent, she plays the moment. And the moment is what she is made for. Some players fight. Iga flows, and when she flows, boy, she drowns you in it. And so, it comes down to this. The storylines have narrowed, the drawers have been emptied, and center court will hold its breath for a final that has not been written in the stars, but etched into the soil of the grass by sheer will, resilience, and contrasting genius. On one side stands Iga Świątek, the world number 1 choreographer of chaos, a mistress of the angels who bends tempo and time like a symphony in full flight. And on the other side, we have Amanda Anisimova, the power hitter reborn, no longer just a ball striker, but a tactician of velocity, a player who once painted lines and now layers depth, spin, surprise onto a canvas. This is more than a battle of shapes, but this is a battle of shapes, not just a battle of shots. This isn't just power versus precision. This is about how the game is going to be won. Either Świątek is going to control this game and win it straight sets, or Anisimova is going to want to take this to the gutter and force Iga to play tennis with her. This is going to be a tantalizing game to watch. I cannot wait to see what happens in this semi-final. Now, my predictions, can't lie, Iga Świątek is going to win this in 3 sets. But not comfortably, because Amanda Anisimova is not just a power player anymore. She's a believer, and she believes in her swing freely. And we saw that on Saturday morning. Sorry, we saw that on Thursday. And I think we'll see the very same thing Saturday morning on the final. But if Amanda wins this first set, I don't know. She's on a 29 game-winning streak of her winning the first set. It's going to be a techie one, but I still give it to Iga because she has been surgical and clinical this entire Wimbledon tournament. So, in my opinion, Świątek defeats Anisimova in a 6-4, in a fashion of either her losing the first set 6-4, or and then coming back 6-3, 6-2, or I see this going one of 2 ways. Świątek winning in 3 sets, or Anisimova winning in straight sets. I don't see Iga winning in straights, but I can see Anisimova winning in straights. Now, here it is. The conductor meets the cannon. One seeks culmination, one seeks a resurrection, and center courts awaits them both. Now, drop down in the comments below who you believe is going to win this final. I am not going to preview the men's game because while I am recording this, in actual fact, I have been watching the Wimbledon semi-finals. And at this point in time, if I'm not mistaken, it is Alcaraz versus Taylor Fritz. And then later on today, we are going to see Novak Djokovic versus Jannik Sinner. In my opinion, I believe Alcaraz is going to beat Fritz, and then I believe that Alcaraz will be met in the final by none other than Jannik Sinner, who currently has a 5-game unbeaten record against Djokovic. Somewhat of a boogeyman, you might say. The last player to be able to do that, if I'm not mistaken, is back in 2017, when Nadal had a 5-win streak over Djokovic. Now, I won't be surprised if Novak pulls one out of the bag here, because he is known for doing that, but I do see this coming down to us having another Sinner-Alcaraz final. And if that final happens, I see Alcaraz taking it, man. He on grass, and just in those tense moments, Alcaraz just switches on a different gear. I don't know how to explain it. It's frustrating, but invigorating to watch. And I'm super excited to see what happens. Now, this weekend is jam-packed with sports, and I will be covering more sports in my Monday episode. That will be dropping again at 6:30. Stay tuned for that. I'll be covering the men's Wimbledon final, and then I'll be covering the ladies Wimbledon final as well, looking at the winners of that. Drop down your predictions in the comment section below, and then I will have a dedicated episode for the rugby post-match analysis with a potential special guest. I will then also be covering the Scottish Open that is coming up, leading into the Open Championship that will take place in the week to follow. Well, guys, I appreciate you listening to the podcast. If you have made it this far, please kindly like, subscribe, comment. I am really looking forward to seeing where this goes and how this grows. And until next time, this has been Ritang Does Sports. Thank you.